It's got a sword for a hand. Watch out.
Its flashes also have a wide range!
Roger.
Zenless Zone Zero is the latest major release by the well-known Chinese game developer and publisher miHoYo. The company gained worldwide fame through their breakout hit Genshin Impact and followed it up with Honkai Star Rail, which was also a huge hit, although probably not on the same scale as Genshin Impact. Now, Triple Z has managed to score over 50 million global downloads in less than a week after its launch. So the game is certainly off to a great start. But what awaits players behind all the hype? If you are not going to watch the entire video, here's a summary. Triple Z is a stylish action game that is designed to be played in short bursts. The game has excellent production values and a decent gameplay loop, but the outdated Gacha monetization model will feel tedious to anyone who has not played similar games in the past or prefers the more modern approach of simply buying what you want without having to depend on RNG. Okay, now let's dive into some details. As someone who has not really spent much time with miHoYo's previous games, I looked at Triple Z with a fairly neutral approach, having nothing to compare the experience against and didn't really know what to expect. I played this game on a PS5 for just around 2 hours. I've spent enough time reading about miHoYo's games to know that this is not how most players like to play these games. Spending hundreds of hours on a mobile device is typically how miHoYo's games are enjoyed by a large section of its core audience. Still, all these games are available on PS5 and PC as well, so it's only fair that some people like me try to treat them like regular console games and give them a try. So here's what I learned from my very brief playthrough of Zenless Zone Zero.
We interrupt your regular programming for this breaking news. A companion hollow has suddenly appeared on 14th Street and has already breached Level 3 containment.
Let me start with the story. The game is set in a futuristic city called New Eridu. You play as a proxy, a sort of guy in the chair kind of hacker who sits in front of 100 TV screens and virtually helps other people who are exploring alternate dimensions called hollows. In the initial hours of the game, you learn more about these hollows, the enemies within them called the ethereal, and a whole lot of other sci-fi sounding terms are thrown at you. You have a sibling, and at the start of the game, you need to decide who you're going to play as, and your sibling then becomes kind of an assistant going forward. The services of a proxy are highly sought after by the common public because apparently it is easy to get lost in these alternate dimensions without having someone to guide you virtually. But more about that in the gameplay section. I barely even finished the prologue in my playthrough, so I can't claim to know how good or bad the story is, but if you like a heavy dose of sci-fi in your games, then this one should feel very familiar. The presentation of the narrative is quite inconsistent. There's a mixture of fully voiced cutscenes, comic strips with voice lines, cutscenes with text but no voice, and then occasionally there will be a single line of text displayed on the screen to tell you what happened next. This is sometimes okay since every small detail need not be shown on screen, but there was this one place where an actual cutscene would have been better than reading a single line of text. Who doesn't want to watch someone go through a wall like on platform 9 3/4? This inconsistency in presentation works sometimes because you never really know what you'll get next, but it also makes the story a bit hard to follow because you tend to focus on the presentation style rather than the actual story. Next, let's talk about the gameplay. Since this game is expected to keep you occupied for hundreds of hours, does it have enough to keep you coming back for more? Well, that depends on whether you're going to like doing a lot of this. Yes, a lot of the early gameplay involves looking at TV screens and waiting for your squad to hit a combat node so that you can then actually start the action part of this action game. It's a weird gameplay experiment that may or may not pay off in an action game, but it is certainly different. When you do actually get into the combat, the game does feel fun to play. The combat consists of choosing a squad of up to 3 characters called agents. In the beginning, you only get 3 or 4 characters for free, but you can unlock more than a dozen other characters through various means. You need to level up and manage the loadout of each character separately, so there is a lot of squad management that goes on before each mission. Once you have picked your squad, you can then switch between them in battles, which can feel quite good if you get the timing right. It is this tag team approach to combat that really saves this game, because remove that and you have a pretty generic action game that tries to keep selling you loot boxes. There are 2 difficulty modes to choose from, casual and challenge, which is good for people who prefer different playstyles. There are primarily 3 kinds of missions in the game. Story missions, which take the plot forward and feature a lot of exposition through cutscenes and text. Exploration missions, where you look at the TVs and occasionally run into some action. And finally, there are combat missions, which focus purely on the combat by skipping the TV stuff altogether. You can start missions in 2 ways, either run around the city and pick them up manually, or use your phone to log into an app and select the missions you want. While the game does not have an open world, you do have the freedom to choose the order of the missions that you want to play, although some missions will still be locked until you get ahead in the story. As you keep playing missions, you pick up various currencies which you will need to level up your squad and buy other equipment. The game has so many different kinds of currencies that I could barely remember any of them. Luckily, there is an option to automatically use the currencies you have while leveling up your agents, so you don't really need to remember the names of all these currencies. Although I suspect the further you get into the game, it will become important to learn about all of them. Now talking about the characters or agents, they are roughly similar to the classes you see in other action games. They each come with their own preferred weapon and fighting style, along with unique special moves. Some of them are not human, which brings this game into the realm of fantasy. The 3 agents that I played with were a combination of melee and ranged classes, and switching between them depending on the fighting style of the enemies offered a decent challenge. The characters are each given a rank, and what's not surprising at all is to see that the highest ranked agents are also the most difficult ones to obtain. And that's pretty much the entire gameplay loop. Take the story forward, unlock more missions, keep getting better agents, and then level them up to survive in higher difficulty missions. I don't know how long the game actually is, but reading about previous games by miHoYo, it will probably take up to a week or more for players to complete everything that the game has to offer, depending on how long you spend on the gacha system trying out your luck. In case you haven't figured it out yet, I don't have a lot of experience with gacha games, and if you don't either, let me try to explain what I learned. The gacha system is very similar to loot boxes, and that itself should tell you how outdated the model is. Sadly, it does have millions of fans, which explains why miHoYo's games are downloaded so much. The concept is that you pay currency, either earned in-game or by using real money, to get access to a chance at earning rewards. Each chance is referred to as a pull, although each game has a different term for it. In this game, it's called a signal search. Anyway, the idea is that a single pull won't really give you anything good unless you're insanely lucky. You're encouraged to buy multiple pulls so that your chances of getting something good go up. There are some bad luck protection measures built in which show that if you go beyond a certain number of pulls, you will get a good reward out of pity. And there's multiple layers of virtual currencies to go through just to make you forget that you're spending real money. For example, over here, An S-class agent is guaranteed if you perform 79 searches. This particular store, called a banner, requires a currency called encrypted master tape to get searches. To get these master tapes, I need to get another currency called polychrome, and to get polychrome, I need a third currency called monochrome, which is only purchasable with real currency. If you want to skip one of these steps and get polychrome directly, you can buy a monthly membership that gives you polychrome daily. And if this was not enough, there are time-limited events where you can get certain agents or other rewards only for a certain number of days. So there's a layer of FOMO added in to ensure that people spend more time and money on the gacha system. And the best part is, after jumping through all these hoops, you're only buying a chance at getting new agents. Sure, there is a guarantee system in place, but to get there you have to spend a lot of money. And not surprisingly, this is where I quickly lost interest to continue playing. I knew before playing this game that the infamous gacha system was not for me, but I wanted to see what the fuss was all about. After all, these games earn millions of dollars every day. At the time of recording this, Triple Z has already earned nearly $25 million in less than a week. So the system clearly works, even if some of us feel it shouldn't exist. Until people stop pouring money into the system, some companies and games will continue using it to make a whole lot of money.
Leave the last one to me!
The only reason I didn't end this video after that purely negative section about monetization is that the game does have some positive qualities as well, starting with the visuals. The game's art style is probably what attracted a lot of people to this game through the trailers. It is very similar to the Persona franchise and seems to have been inspired by anime as well. Despite being available on PS5 and PC, it still looks very much like a mobile game, with the user interface and icons modeled to be easy to use on a touchscreen. This might be a turn-off for regular console and PC players, but if you end up playing the game in the long term, it probably won't bother you too much. The visuals of the game put you at ease and give off a relaxing vibe even in the middle of heavy action. I can imagine how some people would prefer to play such a game over more realistic action games with over-the-top violence. This game still scratches that itch for action, but delivers it in a much more easy to digest wrapper. The sound and music convey the same relaxing tone. The English voice acting is mostly good, but can be a bit too dramatic or childish at places, which is to be expected for a game that is inspired by anime. The music seems to match very well with the art style, and together the presentation makes you believe that you are in a futuristic city where you help the locals with their day-to-day problems. In terms of performance, I didn't face any issues on the PS5. I did hope for some higher visual fidelity, but given that this game has to work well on various mobile phones, I understand that some corners had to be cut. That said, the game still looks and plays as well as most other modern games. Gacha gaming is clearly not for everyone. News outlets cover these games extensively at launch because the headlines are easy to write. 50 million downloads in 3 days, $25 million revenue in less than a week. And given the free-to-play model, a lot of people might be tempted to give it a try, if only due to the fear of missing out. But if you have not tried these games before, be very careful because the gacha system can trigger addictive behavior faster than most other game design systems. If you are confident of ignoring this system altogether, then Triple Z may still have something to offer in terms of a decent sci-fi story and a satisfying combat system. Thanks for watching.